Good afternoon or good evening. My name's Kathy Garretts, and I'm one of the curators here at Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive. Right now, it's Saturday afternoon, March 14th, and we're about to start an unusual program. At the moment, the theater is empty, even though I'm addressing you, and our honored guests are sitting here in front of the screen. Souleymane Cissé, one of the great directors of African cinema, as well as a celebrated contemporary filmmaker, has traveled to Berkeley from Mali. We screened his beautiful film Yaline on Thursday evening, with a conversation following it that was wonderful. Then in the interim period, due to health advisories related to the coronavirus, the BAMPFA was shut down, and we aren't able to screen his film Barra tonight and Finye tomorrow, Sunday night. He graciously agreed to be videotaped here with the Nigerian scholar and writer Akin Adesokan, who is an associate professor of comparative literature and of films and media studies at Indiana University. He also traveled to be here for this special honoring of Souleymane Cissé. Souleymane Cissé is not only a filmmaker bringing to us as audiences a wonderful array of films, he has also worked very diligently to contribute to the future of African cinema and to preserve its past. He's the founding president of the Union of West African Cinema and Audiovisual Designers and Entrepreneurs, which brings extraordinary support to contemporary African filmmaking, helping make it economically viable. He's also a champion of the preservation of the history of African film. He invited Martin Scorsese to Mali to introduce him to some of the amazing films that comprise that history, and now is on the board of Scorsese's World Cinema Foundation, which is dedicated to preserving world cinema and has begun preserving African films. Sometime in the future, which when you are seeing this will be the present, we are going to reschedule the screenings of Barra and Finye. And when we present them, we will also present this taped conversation. I'd like to thank all of our guests, Souleymane Cissé, Akin Adesokan, and Angela Zawadzki, who is providing interpretation, for making this special program possible. I also want to mention that Souleymane Cissé's visit is made possible with the support of the Hollywood Foreign Press, which supports our Afterimage series, in which we pair a key filmmaker and scholar familiar with their work. We're really delighted that this Afterimage program brought the two of them together. I'm now going to turn it over to Akin Adesokan.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. And I would like to start with a question that goes back to what I assume is the beginning of Souleymane Cissé's career as a filmmaker, as an artist. And that's a short film that, according to scholarship about him, he made very early on, perhaps in the late 60s, early 70s, about the Malian artist Some Coulibaly. And I would like for him to talk about this rarely seen film that is not seen very frequently, and if it had any impact on any of his work going forward.
Merci pour la question. Le film dont il parle, ça s'appelle Source d'inspiration.
Thank you for the question. The film that he's talking about is
Source d'inspiration.
Yeah, it's a source of inspiration. That's the name of it.
C'est un film d'exercice quand j'étais étudiant.
I was a student and it was a practice film.
Et c'était une période où l'apartheid était en plein mouvement.
it was a time when apartheid was in full force.
Et donc, on nous a demandé à tous les étudiants de faire un sujet, de traiter un sujet.
So all of us students were required to deal with a particular subject.
Et moi, j'ai choisi de filmer un peintre en train de peindre l'histoire un peu de l'apartheid.
And so I decided to shoot this kind of painting of a story of apartheid.
Et à travers son image, j'ai fait voir les côtés atroces de l'apartheid.
And through his images, this painter's images, I wanted to show the strength, the full force of apartheid.
C'est un film de 7 minutes,
It's a 7-minute film,
mais c'est un film auquel j'étais très révolté.
but
Révolté.
but it was a film which really moved me a great deal and which was dedicated to.
Après les études, je ne sais pas, ça fait presque 40 ans que je n'ai pas vu ce film.
And after that, in terms of, after my schooling, I don't know because I haven't seen that film in 40 years.
Parce que le matériel, il est à Moscou.
The materials are in Moscow. And
Ça fait des années qu'on essaie de récupérer avec l'école de cinéma, mais il n'y a pas de traces.
And we've been trying to retrieve all these films, but we haven't had it.
Okay. It was actually the title that intrigued me because it's called Sources of Inspiration. And since it's a short film at the beginning of his career about Malian artists, I was assuming, maybe wrongly, but at least justifiably, that there might be some kind of continuity in his creative relationship to the work.
Non, mais j'ai dit, qu'est-ce qui m'a amené au cinéma?
Well, I say to myself, so what brought me to filmmaking?
C'est vraiment, je pense, du moins je sais qui a provoqué le déclic d'être cinéaste. Et qui a provoqué chez moi.
What actually clicked for me and actually triggered that desire to become a filmmaker.
De faire du film, c'est une forme de violence.
It was a kind of violence
qui m'a beaucoup écrasé.
Which shattered me.
Et sincèrement, je dis, ce petit film, il vient après le documentaire que j'ai vu, l'actualité filmée que j'ai vu à Bamako.
And honestly, this short film came after I saw all those documentaries of violence that I saw during my studies, the course of my studies.
Sur l'arrestation de Patrice Lumumba.
And so it was through I watched the arrest of Patrice Lumumba.
Là, ça a été un vrai choc.
And that was a huge shock.
Et je crois qu'à partir de ce jour, j'ai décidé vraiment de faire ce métier.
And it was exactly after that time that I decided to start making films.
Ça, c'est avant les études.
That was before school.
Oh. Well, to continue slightly along those lines, especially in relationship to Malian artistic culture,
Par rapport à la culture de Mali.
I wanted to, he and I were talking at breakfast a few days ago about the relative dearth, that is scarcity of literary culture, literary writers, and the general intellectual vibrancy of Mali, especially in comparison with a country like Senegal. But at the same time, cinema, photography, and music are forms that have really made a global impact from Mali. And so I'm wondering if you can make a comment about this situation, especially vis-a-vis Malian political culture at the present time.
Non, moi je ne peux pas lui dire grand-chose là-dedans, c'est ce que je constate.
I can only tell you what I know for sure.
Ma propre constatation, c'est que j'ai des collègues très intelligents,
I have very
des hommes
intelligent
très doués
colleagues,
qui ont la plume très, très forte.
very, very gifted colleagues with a very skilled pen.
Des intellectuels
Intellectuals.
Et quand je leur demande de faire des livres, ils disent qu'ils ne le font pas. Ils ne veulent pas le faire.
And when I ask them to write books, they say no, they don't want to do it.
Alors c'est la question que je me pose moi-même. Pourquoi?
And I ask myself that question.
Pourquoi ils ne veulent pas écrire?
Why are they refusing to write?
De l'indépendance à maintenant, le livre écrit par les Maliens, ça se compte par doigts.
You can count in one hand all the books that have been written by Malians.
C'est pas parce qu'il n'y a pas d'intellectuels.
Not because there's a dearth of intellectual life.
Mais je ne comprends pas le refus.
I just don't understand their attitude.
Et j'aimerais un jour que ce débat se pose au Mali. Que ce débat ait lieu au Mali.
And I think that this is totally linked to Mali.
À d'autres niveaux.
And on different levels as well.
Pour que je puisse dire ce que je pense.
And so there's something has to be said so that I can tell, or something has to change so that I can speak about it.
All right. In fact, that also leads me to talking about the writing of a film like Barra, because it's a film that moves between different worlds, classes, and castes, between Bala and Bala. And at the same time, writing this as a script, you were obviously working through some ideas. And so I'm interested although it's a long time now since this film came out, I wanted to know what you are able to reflect upon, especially in relationship to what you knew while writing this and what you found out in the process of working on this film.
Il faut situer les films dans leur contexte.
You have to place it in context, this film.
Comment Barra est venu? Comment?
How it happened, how Barra came about.
Suite à des difficultés incroyables au Mali concernant ma cinématographie.
The film was made after huge difficulties in Mali.
Parce que je viens de sortir de prison.
I was I was in the peasant situation.
À cause de mon premier film, Demoso.
Yeah, I had to leave the country because of my first film.
La jeune fille, Demoso, c'est le titre du film.
The name of the film is
Demoso.
Demoso.
Yes,
Yeah.
La jeune fille.
The young girl.
Voilà. Et comme j'ai eu des problèmes terribles avec ce film.
And I had terrible problems with that film.
Et quand on m'a emprisonné et que je suis sorti de prison,
and I was in prison, that's what I said when I got out of prison.
Mes comédiens sont venus me voir pour me demander de faire un autre film.
My actors came to see me and they asked me to make another film.
Et cela trouvait qu'ils avaient censuré mon premier film.
Because they had censored my first film.
Et voilà comment l'histoire de Barra est venue à moi.
And this is how the story of Barra came to me.
C'est l'ensemble des faits sociaux
and it was a whole series of social facts
qui étaient à ma portée.
Yes, they were given to me, they were provided.
Et que je devais trouver une façon d'exprimer ce problème.
And I had to articulate this huge problem.
Pour penser à la sortie de crise, si on peut se permettre.
And if we could think about it, how to get out of this crisis.
Qui allait arriver au pays.
Which had happened in the country.
C'était la naissance d'une industrialisation.
Because it was the birth of industrialization.
Et voilà, donc Barra a été conçu dans ce cadre-là, le scénario a été traité et bon, on s'est mis à le réaliser.
So this is how Barra was born. That was the script was in that context, and that's how the treatment was born, and then we started the filming.
Okay, so in the process of filming, I'm interested in some kind of transformation that he himself may have gone through as a writer now. Because writing the scripts, having the script, and walking through the process of filming itself are two different processes.
niveau.
Non, l'histoire de Barra, je l'ai écrit. Je l'ai écrit.
I wrote the story of
S'il
Barra.
veut, je peux lui envoyer le scénario.
And in fact, I can send you the
Mais c'est pas
screenplay.
ça. Donc, ce scénario, effectivement, le film, il correspond à ce que j'avais écrit.
And in fact, the script is exactly what the film is about. It's what I described in the film.
Mais c'est vrai que quand on fait un film, il y a toujours ce qu'on appelle des choses qu'on ne s'attendait pas, des imprévus qui arrivent au moment du tournage.
And of course, when you make a film, there are certain things that you don't hear, but they come to you at the time of shooting.
Et cinématographiquement, on appelle ça le sel, du sel.
And
Mettre
that's
un peu
what we
de sel.
call the salt of making a film from the point of view of filmmaking.
Okay, to follow with an example then, I want you to speak to the scene in Barra, the discussion between Bala and his friend who is drunk at 3 man at the nightclub. And I mean, it's a very opaque discussion. The man is drunk, but at the same time, he's saying very serious things. Now, what do we make of that? Especially because of what happened later in the film. Do these discussions that they have, do they reflect intellectual issues in Mali at the time? Or do we don't need to look beyond what's in the film? I mean, is the discussion just internal to the film, or is it an attempt to make a comment on what was going on in Mali at the time?
Non, vous savez, c'est vrai que mes histoires, c'est des histoires maliennes, mais elles reviennent toujours à l'humanité.
Yeah, but of course these are all Malian stories, but of course they have a human or universal impact.
Et donc tous mes films sont basés sur l'humain, les rapports, les conflits.
So all my films are based on that, on human beings and their conflicts.
Ce moment de révolte de ce soulard n'est pas comment faire-tu, c'est pas quelque chose de, moi c'est sciemment fait parce que
this was really done seriously. This was not just something fleeting, something banal.
Parce qu'aujourd'hui, pas seulement le Mali, presque tout le continent se trouve confronté à ce problème qui se pose aujourd'hui.
Because not just Mali, the entire continent is facing this problem that that was stated in the film. It's just going on right now.
C'est le vol, c'est la corruption.
Corruption, theft.
Donc, tous nos pays sont minés par ça.
All of our countries have been undermined by that
Et je pense que le soulard, il le dit bien.
And I think that Sula says it very clearly.
Mais tout ce qu'il a dit, effectivement, 30 ans après, on est en plein toujours dedans.
And 30 years later, when he said 30 years ago, we're living it right now. We're in the full living this situation at this time.
But why does he put that in the mouth of a drunken man? Was it an attempt to escape censorship?
Non, mais pourquoi il s'est donné à l'alcool? C'est parce qu'il n'a aucun moyen de s'exprimer.
But that's the reason he has to drink alcohol, because he has no other way to express himself.
Beaucoup de gens d'ailleurs qui deviennent fous tellement les honnêtes hommes, ils savent pas.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who become crazy. Honest people just don't know.
Tu ne sais pas comment t'exprimer, tu ne peux pas.
You have no idea how to express your ideas. You don't have the means to articulate your thoughts.
On sait qu'il est sourd, mais ce qu'il dit, c'est vrai.
But we know that what he says is true.
All right. To now turn to the question of censorship. The film Finye is a very political film. And it's developed around tensions of romantic love and political commitment, especially between young people. And given the political climate under which the film was made during the military government of Alpha Conare in the 1980s, how did he escape censorship with this film? Are there any incidents? I mean, we know the story of his imprisonment over Demoso, but subsequently, in the 80s, when he made this film, did he have any problem? Because it's a film that was directly political, critical of the military regime. And how did you make that film without running, afoul of the military government?
Bah, écoute, je ne sais pas, peut-être, je le dis d'ailleurs, je le redirai un jour.
I don't know, perhaps, but let me tell you that I will say this one day.
Au Mali, on peut cracher sur les militaires comme on veut,
You can spit on the military whenever you want in Mali,
mais ils n'ont jamais voulu vendre nos salles de cinéma.
but they didn't want to sell our cinemas.
Jamais.
Never.
C'est après
It was after
cette révolution de Alpha Oumar Konaré que vous parlez,
after the revolution of Alpha Conare
on a vendu toutes les salles de cinéma au Mali.
that we were able to sell out the the theaters in Mali.
Vous êtes cadre, vous pouvez vous faire une déduction.
Then you could do something in that regard.
Le problème, il a parlé de Alpha Oumar Konaré.
You spoke about Alpha Conare.
Quand je faisais ce film, Alpha Oumar Konaré, il était ministre de la Culture.
Alpha Conare was the Minister of Culture at the time.
Je suis parti quand j'ai écrit le scénario et je lui ai donné le scénario.
I left when I wrote the script, and
Et je lui ai demandé de lire le
I
scénario
asked him to read the script.
et je voulais son autorisation pour filmer.
And I wanted his authorization to make the film.
Une semaine après, je suis venu le voir.
And a week later, I came to see him.
Il m'a dit, Cissé, moi, je ne peux pas te donner l'autorisation pour faire ce film.
I cannot give you the authorization if it were up to me.
Il faut que tu passes voir le chef de l'État.
You have to see the head of state.
Et alors, j'ai dit, mais comment je fais alors?
And I said, what do you want me to do?
Il dit, en tout cas, moi, en tant que ministre de la Culture, je ne peux pas
And as a Minister of Culture, I cannot
te donner l'autorisation
authorize you
de faire ce film.
to make this film. I can't do it.
Alors, je l'ai remercié pour son honnêteté
And I thank him for being so honest.
et je suis parti voir le chef des militaires,
And I went to see the head of the military,
qui était le chef d'État,
who was the head of state.
et qui m'a fait sortir de prison
And he actually got me out of prison
pour l'affaire de Demosso.
because of the.
What was the name of the president at the time? The name of this president, the head of state at the time. I thought it was Alpha Conare, but apparently not.
Est-ce qu'il était alors le président à l'époque?
Qui? Alpha?
Alpha?
Yeah.
Non, Alpha était ministre. Le président, c'était Moussa Traoré.
Oh,
Moussa Traoré was the president.
General Moussa
Alpha
Traoré.
was the Minister of Culture.
Oh, okay.
Vous comprenez?
So,
You understand?
yeah, I thought it was Alpha Conare and Moussa Traoré and Atete.
Moussa Traoré était le président de la République
Moussa Traoré was the president of the
de
Republic
68 à 1992.
from 68 until
92.
1992.
92. Alpha est venu au pouvoir de 92
And Alpha came to
Jusqu'à
power at that
98.
time until 98.
Oui.
Until 98.
ATT est venu à la présidence de 98 jusqu'à 2000 et quelques,
and-
2006.
And then at the end, he came to the presidency in 2006.
So,
Voilà comment le processus.
That was a process.
okay, so Alpha Conare was the one who overthrew Moussa Traoré. Alpha Conare was the one who overthrew the government of Moussa Traoré.
And he was a member of the
Oh.
government of Moussa Traoré.
So there was no question of censorship there. I mean, because the reason I'm asking this is that also in Nigeria, which around the same time was under a military government, if you wanted to be critical, they didn't care what people said in cinema or in books. Wole Soyinka or Ken Saro-Wiwa could write anything about the government, but if they made a direct attack on the government, rather than what they write or what they film, that's when they got into trouble. So what he said about the government not caring about cinema is actually true. I mean, also true of a place like Nigeria. that censorship actually came only when a writer or an intellectual directly attacks the government in a political way rather than artistic way. Often.
Lui, il pense que mon film Figné était une attaque directe.
So you think my film ends with a direct attack to the government?
I think it was very critical of the military government, of military system.
Moi, je pense que c'est un système politique.
It does many
I wasn't
things.
thinking about political system.
It does many things. It is a film about the revolt of the young people, about a young girl who has social conscience, really reacting against the power of his father or patriarchy. But at the same time, it's a film where people actually take guns and shoot young people. And in fact, as a matter of fact, it's rare in African cinema. The films are critical. They could be critical of imperialism, but Figné is actually nearly exceptional in actually putting military on the streets against young people who are revolting against constituted authority.
Oui, bon, moi je dis, Figné, il est venu dans un contexte où on ne pouvait pas censurer ce film parce que c'était délicat de le censurer.
Yeah, but it was very difficult because it was a very delicate situation for that film.
D'abord, je vais vous dire l'anecdote autour de ce film.
I'm going to tell you the story around the film.
Quand Alpha Oumar Konaré, le ministre de la Culture, m'a dit qu'il ne peut pas donner l'autorisation, je me suis adressé au chef de l'État,
So, and I went to see the head of state,
qui était le général Moussa Traoré,
who was Moussa Kawe. He was General Moussa Kawe.
et qui suivait mes activités,
And he was tracking my activities
parce que c'est lui qui m'a fait sortir de prison
because he got me out of prison.
et que j'ai fait BAARA.
And I made Barra.
Et ça l'a réconforté en tant que président parce que pour son action.
And he was feeling very smug in his presidency because
Donc,
of the act, this generous act.
Et quand je suis venu avec le scénario de Figné,
And when I took the scenario of Figné,
il m'a reçu dans son bureau, comme lui et moi.
he welcomed me in his office, just like
Et
this.
je lui ai dit, voilà le scénario, je voudrais faire un film sur les militaires.
And I showed it to him and I said, I'm going to make a film about the military.
Moi, j'ai cru qu'il n'a pas entendu.
I thought he hadn't heard me.
J'ai dit que non, je voudrais faire un film sur les militaires.
And I said, I want to make a film
Il dit,
about
mais
the military.
Monsieur Cissé, qu'est-ce que vous voulez que je vous dise? Il faut faire votre film.
And
Il m'a répondu, il faut faire votre film.
And he said to me, Mr. Cissé, what do you want me to say? You have to make a film.
Mais je lui ai dit que je n'ai pas les moyens
And I told him I didn't have the means.
de faire les habits militaires,
I didn't have the money to make
le
all
matériel militaire.
the materials and the props and the costumes.
Il m'a dit qu'il n'y a aucun problème.
And he told me, no problem
Vous
whatsoever.
me dites ce que vous avez besoin et je vous le donne.
Ask me for anything you need, I'll give it to you.
Séance tenante, il a fait un mot pour
And-
transmettre au ministre des Transports et au ministre de l'Armée.
All we needed was one word to talk to the transportation and the ministry and the
Pour qu'ils mettent
army
à ma disposition
and to make
les armements que j'ai besoin,
whatever weapons and
les véhicules que j'ai besoin,
cars, vehicles that he put them at my disposal, but made everything available to me.
et tout le matériel.
Everything, all the material.
J'ai pas eu de problème.
I had no problems whatsoever.
Et quand le film est terminé,
And when the film was finished,
j'ai réuni mes collègues,
I got my companions, my
fait une
colleagues.
projection comme d'habitude.
So we always have a screening after the end of the film.
Après la projection,
And after the screening,
un ami me dit,
a friend says to me,
tu es fou de rentrer avec ce film au Mali.
you should not go back to to Mali with that film. You're crazy if you do that.
À ta place, je resterai ici. Je ne montrerai pas ce film.
I would stay here if I were you. I would not go into Mali.
Je lui ai dit que moi, j'ai eu l'autorisation de le faire.
And I told him I was authorized to
Je
make
vais
the
rentrer
film,
au Mali avec ce film.
and I was going to go back to Mali, and I would bring the film with me.
Et je suis rentré au
And I
Mali
did.
avec le film.
And I did. I went back.
Mais la première des choses, c'était de pouvoir montrer au chef de l'État, au président de la
But
République.
the main thing, the first thing was to be able to show it to the head of state, to the
Ça a été la
president of the
première
republic.
projection du film.
That was the first screening that took place.
Et j'ai été dans son village,
And I was in his village.
il était en vacances,
He was away on vacation.
et je lui ai montré le film.
And so that's when I was able to show him the film.
Autour de lui, c'était calme parce qu'il y avait que des cadres militaires.
And around him, there were just entire, only military personnel.
Ça chuchotait, je tremblais au fond de moi-même.
Inside, I was shaking in my boots.
Parce qu'autour, je savais que les militaires, ils n'étaient pas contents.
Because we were surrounded by military people, and I know that
Et quand
they
ils
were
sont en
not
colère,
happy.
ça se sent.
And you can feel it when they're angry.
Alors, moi, je suis parti, je n'ai pas pu oser demander au président qu'est-ce qu'il pense du film. Je n'ai
And
pas
so
pu.
I went and told the president,
Donc,
what did you think about the film?
J'ai passé une nuit blanche.
And I was sleepless
Je ne
that
savais
whole
pas
night. I
qu'est-ce
didn't
que-
know what.
Qu'est-ce qui m'attend?
I had no idea what was waiting for me.
Le matin, je me réveille,
Morning, I wake up in the morning,
je vais le voir.
and I went to see him.
Il était tout seul.
He was by himself.
Je lui dis, Monsieur le Président, qu'est-ce que vous pensez du film?
And I asked him, Mr. President, what do you think about my film?
Il m'a répondu, c'est un bon film.
He said it's a good film.
J'ai dit, Monsieur le Président, est-ce que le film, on peut le sortir au Mali?
Mr. President, can this film be screened in Mali?
Il dit, bien sûr.
Sure, he said.
Voilà comment le film est sorti.
And this is how the film came out.
Interesting. Okay.
That's the
C'est
story.
l'anecdote de
Okay.
Fignet.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's
I'll now
my
turn
an-
to actually talking about the film and not the politics of it.
Alors, on ne va pas
Okay.
seulement parler de la politique.
So I'm interested in sequences in Souleymane Cissé's work that seem natural, that seem as if they are minimally rehearsed. For example, there's this the scene in Three Caimans at the nightclub where they were fighting. There's a fight scene where people were fighting. Okay, it's actually it's extremely hard to look at because it was very charged, but at the same time it seemed as if it wasn't fully rehearsed. So the other scene is in Finye, where the grandmother throws water on Barra and it leads to a big fight. So I mean, how does he handle those scenes that seem, like as if they happen naturally, but if you look at it very well, it also seems as if there's a lot of work going on. So I'm interested in him responding to that kind of directing.
Oui, mais je pense que quand on a les gens naturels,
When you have natural
comme on
people,
veut, ils jouent comme tu veux, comme tu le sens.
yeah, then they act as they feel.
Il suffit de les mettre dans les conditions
It's all you have to do is put them in the right situation
et de leur faire confiance.
and also to have them trust you.
Et je pense que quand l'acteur sent la confiance du réalisateur,
And when an actor feels trust and trusts the filmmaker,
il est beaucoup plus motivé.
he's much more motivated.
Donc il faut créer la situation tout simplement.
So all you have to do is create the setting and the situation.
Parce que cette histoire banale qu'il raconte,
Yeah, because the story of the old lady is
c'est un rapport entre la
C'est-
tradition et la modernité.
it's a trivial story, but it's just something between tradition and modernity.
Mais comment le montrer en image aux gens simples
But the idea is how to show it through images to simple people.
pour des gens d'un autre âge se projeter dans le futur.
For people from a different age and a different period to be able to project themselves into the
Cette
future.
grand-mère
This
ne peut pas
grandmother,
concevoir que sa petite fille va se laver nue avec un garçon.
this old grandmother who cannot imagine, she cannot fathom that her little granddaughter is going to bathe naked with a young man.
Il n'y a que le changement ici.
this is the big change in here.
Et le regard vers le futur.
Yes, people looking into the future.
Okay, there's another scene that, earlier on I actually wanted to talk about. This is the scene where the street children were dragging Barra, the young man in Finye, dragging him around because he's stoned. And as I said, it's a film that anybody who has seen Gillo Pontecorvo's Battle of Algiers will remember. I know now, I haven't talked to Souleymane, that there's no direct resonance on this film. But I'm also interested in that scene. How did that scene came about? Because, in fact, it was just a very ordinary scene, and it ended in a very funny way, with him asking the soldiers for cigarettes, and they were saying, "No, you are stoned. You don't even know you have your matchstick around your neck."
Il parle de Barra. Hein?
Yes,
You're talking
yes,
about Barra,
yes.
sorry.
Non. D'abord, la déception de Barra fait que le fait qu'il a échoué à son bac.
Yeah, the fact that Bach is so disappointed because he failed his school.
Il s'est donné à l'alcool, on l'a entraîné dans la drogue.
He threw himself into drugs, alcohol, drunkenness.
Et vous savez, chez nous, quand vous sortez et que vous tip-tap, comme on dit, vous faites les yim-yimés là.
And when you go out in the street and you're tipsy and you're walking around like
et
that.
Les jeunes enfants, ça les excite.
And it's very exciting to young people,
autour
to young
de vous,
boys.
Et ils essayent de t'exciter de plus.
And what they try to do is to goad him on, they try to bully him and
Et
push
pour
him
moi,
on.
c'est une autre prise de conscience même pour Barra.
And so this is another a moment of awareness for Ba once more.
Et c'est ça, ce changement, ce mouvement des enfants autour de lui, qui le tire à gauche, à droite.
And this moment of the children pulling him to the right and to the left,
Ça l'a formé, ça l'a dirigé vers ce qu'il voulait, vers son objectif.
This is something that shapes him, that molds him. It instructs him towards his objective, to his purpose.
Vous savez, chez nous, quand il y a des fous dans la rue,
yeah, when you see a mad person in the street in our home in Mali,
quand le fou est calme,
when the mad person is calm,
personne ne parle.
Nobody talks, nobody says
Mais
anything.
quand un fou est excité,
but an excited fool, when an excited
les petits
madman,
enfants le excitent encore.
Children just
Ils
goad
le
him
poussent,
even more,
ils le
push
poussent
him,
vraiment.
push him.
Et ça, c'est très fréquent.
This is a very frequent occurrence.
Even in Nigeria. But there are also, moments that recur from one film to another, and they are very small, very minuscule, but they are also very poignant that I actually keep noticing them. For example, in Barra, when Bala wants to go to the nightclub, his wife wants to go with him, and then she says she doesn't want to go again. Yeah, and then also in Finye, Ba wants to bathe with Batru. She wants to do it, and then she doesn't want to do it. I just think that these are very interesting, precious moments that are really very defining characteristic of Souleymane Cissé's aesthetic. How does it work through this? I can understand one being a tension between husband and wife, but these are young people. So these two similar situations, occurring in relationship to men and women in different films. Is he aware of this? Is he just being playful, or are these just things that actors act out in the process of making filmmaking?
C'est-à-dire, je ne saisis pas bien la question. Il n'a qu'à prendre un exemple concret.
Could you please take a very specific example, because that way I can give you an answer.
I'm saying that there's a scene in Barra where when Bala is about to go to the nightclub and the wife says, "I want to go with you." And he says, "Well, okay, if you want to come, go and dress up." And then she says, "No, I don't want to go again." And he says, "Well, you are very complicated." the same kind of situation happens in Finye, and the same response from the man is, "You are so complicated." And I'm saying that these seem to be...
Pardon, dans Finien, dans quelle partie?
At which part of the Finnish?
This was when Bala wants to bathe, and Batru wants to bathe with him. Bathe. Yes.
Écoute, tu sais, les rapports humains sont tellement complexes
Human relationships are so complex.
et que chaque couple quand même a son identité.
Each particular couple
Yeah.
has its own identity.
Il y a des gestes qui peuvent se ressembler,
There are certain gestures that may resemble one another,
mais la complicité reste toujours parce que c'est très complexe.
but there is a complicity between couples because things are very
Et c'est
complicated.
ça qui est la recherche dans un couple.
And that's richness, that's the rich material that you find in couples.
Parce que dans un couple, il y a tellement de contradictions
Couples are full of contradictions.
qui fait que deux fois, on se pose la question comment résoudre le problème.
And you sometimes ask the question, how are they going to solve those problems?
Et je m'excuse, je ne veux pas être le donneur de leçons, mais
I'm
je
not going to
sais
give you lessons, but
je sais que dans un couple, quand même, il y a des gestes de fois qui fait que on va jusqu'au divorce à cause des gestes.
and sometimes there are gestures that occur in a couple situation that can lead to divorce.
C'est une richesse incroyable.
There's such a wealth.
Chacun le décrit comme il le sent.
There's such richness in
Mais
couples.
même si je dois faire un nouveau film, c'est vrai que ça ne sera pas. Ils vont avoir les mêmes lignes, mais ça ne sera pas la même expression.
And so each one solves the situation the way they want to. And I know that if I were to make another film, even if we had the same lines, I know that they will not have the same resolution or the same situation in
Yeah.
the end.
Moi, je ne peux pas dire que je prends l'exemple sur moi, puisque moi, je n'ai jamais le temps d'aller en boîte avec ma femme.
And you know, for instance, I take my own example. I never have the time to go to a nightclub
All right.
with my wife.
All right.
I don't take the time, I should say.
Which then leads me to a question that's kind of similar. In Finye, when Kasanye, the grandfather of Ba, goes to the military man to challenge him for imprisoning his grandson, and he's leaving. The military man takes a gun and shoots him, but his charms were probably so powerful that the bullets were deflected, and so he wasn't hurt. The same kind of scene repeats itself in Yellen between the two actors. In this case, the man who plays the military man plays the Pale King, and Kasanye was Nyankoro's uncle. So, I mean, is this a question of him just playing with the two actors, or is this something that happens between actors? I mean, I really want him to talk about the kind of synergy or chemical that goes between actors, especially these two actors who have appeared in several of his films, and the lady Anya, who is the wife of the military man in Finye. In the film Finye, yeah. So what kind of energy, what kind of chemistry is going on between these actors that makes this, especially this scene? I mean, they're very different kind of films and moments, but it occurs in the same manner between two actors.
Je pense quand même, j'avais dit au départ que chez moi, un comédien, il a un rôle beaucoup plus important que celui que j'ai, moi, de diriger.
What I think, and I tell them all the time, is that actors have a much more important role than I do.
Parce que diriger, on peut donner des ordres.
Because we
Quand
can tell them how to
l'intuition
do
vient au
things.
profond de soi-même, je crois qu'on agit mieux. Et c'est ce qui fait que les comédiens, je leur fais confiance, on parle, on discute, et je dis voilà ce qui reste souhaitable, mais je leur laisse la liberté de s'exprimer.
And so I give them directions, but I allow them to express their intuition. I trust them. I instruct them, but I trust them completely. So I let them express what comes from the deepest point in their being.
Et je pense que c'est très important. C'est pour ça, dans chaque de ces films,
and I think that's very important because in each one of these films,
tu trouveras ces gestes. Tu as parlé de Atou, tu as parlé de Anya.
Because you'll see these gestures, right? These faces, these gestures.
C'est des gestes naturels.
And you said, we talked about Atou, Nanya, and
venir de chaque femme.
And they're natural gestures that are just emerge from each woman.
Il suffit tout simplement qu'ils soient à l'aise pour pouvoir le formuler.
And what should happen is they should be completely at ease so that they can formulate and they can come up and surface so they can express them.
Is he aware of these sins? I mean, do these sins resonate with him? I mean, because I was surprised, really, to see, especially the sin of a gunshot or an attempt to attack another person between two actors. Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious that and so recurrent that it cannot be missed. So I'm just thinking now that to shift focus away from actors and his own, attitude towards this as the director. I mean, how does he think of repeating these scenes from one film to another?
Écoutez, peut-être que j'ai mal compris la question.
Maybe I didn't quite understand your question.
Et donc, je ne pourrais pas lui répondre avec autant de précision.
I'll try to be as precise
je voudrais comprendre tout simplement de quel geste il parle parce que pour moi, les rapports entre les maris, par exemple, dans le vent.
Okay, for instance, I would like to ask you specifically what gestures you're talking about because, for instance, when we talk about the rapport between with the husband and the wind.
Okay. Dans le vent, par exemple, le colonel.
In the wind, the colonel.
Il a 3 femmes.
There are 3 women.
Et la troisième, la plus petite, c'est elle qui fait la loi.
And the third one, who happens to be the youngest, she's the one who establishes the law. She sets the rules.
Mais elle est très jeune.
But she's very young.
Il y a un décalage d'âge.
She's just very young woman.
Elle a besoin de sa vie, de vivre sa vie. Elle.
She needs to live her life. She hasn't lived her life yet.
Elle en profite.
And she takes advantage.
Et quand le colonel le sait, il se met en colère et puis ça s'arrête là.
And when the colonel finds out, the whole thing comes to a stop.
C'est pour ça que les autres femmes le considèrent comme un fou.
And that's why the other women think that he's crazy.
Tu vois la scène où il masse les pieds, où les femmes sortent.
Remember when the scene in the rubbing of the feet and the women
font semblant de s'engueuler.
And they
font semblant de s'engueuler.
And they say they think that they are bleeding.
Mais c'est leur façon de gérer leur mari.
But this is a way to remove themselves from anything bad happening.
C'est des trucs très psychologiques, mais
there are psychological tricks.
Et voilà. Moi, c'est comme ça que j'ai compris la chose.
This is how I try to understand what you were asking me.
I was more interested, I don't want to drag it too much because it's, maybe not many people will notice. I do notice because especially the one I'm quite interested in is the scene where the colonel tries to shoot the grandfather, Kasanye. And I'm saying that for those 2 actors who have worked for a very long time in Souleymane Cissé's films, you see a similar scene playing out in a different context in Yellen. Yes, it's just that those 2 different films have 2 actors acting the same kind of scene out in 2 different films. In ways that are not purely accidental from the point of view of a viewer who is also a critical viewer.
Acteur fétiche pour moi.
They are special actors for me.
J'ai commencé avec eux depuis mon premier film.
I started working with them after my
Nous
first
avons fait
film.
Barra ensemble.
And then we made Barra together.
Nous avons fait Figné ensemble.
And then we did Figné
Et nous
together.
avons fait Yélène.
And then we did Yelin.
Donc, c'est des rapports très spéciaux.
We have very special relationship.
Et c'est des comédiens vraiment très mûrs pour
They're
moi.
very mature actors.
Et c'est pour ça, les rôles que je leur confie, c'est des rôles vraiment qui me semblent importants.
So I trust him with roles that are important to me.
Voilà, je ne sais pas si j'ai compris, mais
I think is that what I...
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I want to ask a question, especially about the film What? This film What? About which it's actually a very ambitious project, an attempt to connect West Africa and South Africa politically, cinematically, and also historically. But there is very little that's been known or seen of this film. Does he want to talk about the context for making this film and the challenges that he faced? And how come we haven't really given as much attention to this film, especially in relationship to films like Yellen and Barra?
Oui, bon, Wati, c'est un film.
Wati is
C'est un film qui est tombé. Wati, c'est le temps.
Wati means time.
C'est un film qui est tombé à une période
And it happens in a particular period
où j'ai eu l'impression que les gens, je dis les politiques, ne voulaient pas se mouiller. Les politiciens dans le monde ne voulaient pas se mouiller.
This is a time when politicians in the entire world didn't want to get wet.
C'était à la fin de l'apartheid.
It was at the end of apartheid.
Et donc, avec le nouveau gouvernement, personne ne voulait être touché.
Yeah, people didn't want to be close to anything like that after the end of apartheid and with the new government.
Mais à
They
vrai
want to
dire,
be left untouched.
on a voulu étouffer ce film.
And so they wanted they tried to suppress the film.
C'est pour ça que j'ai demandé, puisque la Cinémathèque française va faire une rétrospective,
And I asked specifically because the Cinémathèque française is going to have a retrospective.
et je leur ai demandé d'ouvrir ces rétrospectives par le film Wati.
And I asked them to open the retrospective with this film, with Wati.
Là, c'est une demande politique,
And this is a political request I made.
parce que ce film est là à sa place.
Because the film is right there. It's in its own place. That's
C'est
where it
ma
has its
conviction.
place. And I am totally convinced.
Il y a eu trop de micmac autour de ce film.
And there are a lot of things going on around this film.
De la sortie de Cannes,
And it came out in Cannes.
ça a été un grand débat.
There was a huge debate in Cannes.
Excusez-moi que je prononce parce qu'il y avait Nandi Godmer qui était membre du jury à Cannes. Nadine.
Nadine Gourdimer. Nadine Gourdimer was one. Excuse me for my pronunciation.
Et
She was one of the jurors.
qui a osé dire
And
que
she had
ce film caricaturisait trop les Blancs.
And she had the goal to say that this film was a caricature of white people.
Et quand Martin a vu le film, Martin Scorsese,
And when Martin Scorsese saw the film,
il dit que c'était la première fois qu'il voit un film sur le racisme fait par les Noirs, c'est-à-dire en Afrique du Sud,
and
par
so
un Africain.
he said this was the first time he saw a film about racism made by an African, about South Africa.
Et que le contenu va au-delà. Le contenu
And the content,
va au-delà.
and that the content really went far beyond
Ce
what was
film,
being said.
je le dis, je le répète, parce que même quand les autorités politiques ont changé en Afrique du Sud,
Yeah, because at the same time, political authorities were changing in South Africa.
on a eu l'impression qu'on ne veut plus se voir dans le miroir.
And then we had this feeling that we didn't want to look at ourselves in the mirror anymore.
Mais hélas, Ce qui se passe aujourd'hui encore, bon, on verra. Hein. Ce film, en tout cas, il va exister comme le titre le dit.
And then you see what's going on still today. So anyway, you're going to be seeing the film, and the title is...
Et ça, c'était à tous les niveaux, hein, partout. Même pour la distribuer, c'était tout un problème.
We had huge problems, even at the level of distribution.
Il y a quelque chose qui gênait.
There is something that annoys people.
Sinon, il y a eu des films plus violents aux États-Unis ici sur le racisme.
And here in the United States, you have far more violent films about racism, for instance.
Mais ils sont sortis partout.
But they don't all come out.
Mais ce film, on l'a étouffé.
But this film was suppressed.
On ne veut pas le voir.
And they don't want to see it.
Voilà.
Which is interesting because two very related things. I mean, having become a darling of the film world with yelling, and then having this very contradictory reception of his film. On the other hand, a few years after Wati, the South African writer J.M. Coetzee wrote a novel called Disgrace. A novel called Disgrace. Yeah, and which was also seen to be a caricature of black people by a white filmmaker. And out of his annoyance or frustration with the reception, J.M. Coetzee actually renounced his South African citizenship and became an Australian, and he has never returned to South Africa since then. So, I mean, this is a way of saying that the kind of reaction that he gets towards the film is not totally unprecedented. And, I mean, of course, it's specific to him, but a South African white writer also has a comparable experience. So perhaps this is a problem between politicians and artists in general.
Oui, mais ce que je lui ai pas dit, c'est que ce film, il a eu l'appui de Mandela en personne.
This film was actually, a lot of people asked for this film.
Parce que Mandela venait de sortir.
Because it just come out.
Et j'ai eu la chance de le rencontrer pour lui parler de ce film.
And I talked to him about the film.
Who?
Mandela.
Mandela, I'm sorry. Okay. It was Mandela. Mandela, I talked to him about the film.
Donc, quand il est venu au pouvoir, on a essayé de lui montrer le film, mais on m'a barré complètement le...
When Mandela came to power, we tried to approach him and to show him the film, and I was stopped. I was blocked from doing it.
Ce film, nous avons passé 3 mois en Afrique du Sud pour le faire.
We spent 3 months in South Africa in order to make this film.
Et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, aucun Sud-Africain ne l'a vu en Afrique du Sud.
And no South African has seen the film in South Africa.
Il y a plusieurs manières de censurer un film.
There are different ways in which censorship can happen.
Mais c'est pas pour ça que nous on se décourage.
And this is something, you know, that could be very discouraging.
L'essentiel est que le film ne disparaît pas.
The important thing is for the film not to disappear.
Et qu'il ne soit pas détruit.
And not to destroy it.
Mais tant qu'il existe, un jour viendra que les gens demanderont à le voir.
And so, as long as it exists, there will be one day in which people will ask.
Et chercheront à comprendre pourquoi on va censurer.
And they will try to find out how come it was censored, how come it was suppressed for so long.
Et je suis sûr que ce moment va venir et ça viendra pour
And I am certain that the moment will come, because it will come.
Parce qu'il est important ce film.
Because that film is important.
Okay, that's interesting. One last question, if I may. This is always a tricky question for an artist, but I'm interested in this film, Wati, which is his last known film, came out over nearly 30 years ago. Yeah, that's actually a long time. I don't know whether he has done something in between. I'm not sure that he has. So I'm just finding a very nice way of asking what's going on creatively.
D'abord, en ce temps, j'ai fait Mignet.
Right now I'm making Mignet.
Qui est passé sélectionné au Festival de Cannes.
It was shown at the film festival in Cannes.
Ensuite, j'ai fait Oka, Notre Maison.
And I did another one called Our Home, called Oka.
en 2015 qui avait été sélectionné aussi au Festival de Cannes.
which was also one of the selections for the Cannes Festival.
Il y a quelqu'un qui me dit un jour, il me dit, Cissé, ton cinéma, il gêne.
Somebody told me once that your filmmaking annoys people, bugs us.
Et là, je dis, bon, c'est possible. Hein.
And I said, yeah, it could be.
Mais viendra le jour où les gens demanderont à voir quelques films de moi.
But one day will come and people will want to see my films.
Et c'est ma conviction.
And I'm sure of that.
C'est pour ça que je continue à me battre.
And that's why I continue to struggle.
Et mon dernier projet, enfin, pas dernier projet, mon projet que je vis aujourd'hui, c'est
My current project right now
que
is
j'appelle TAMA,
Tama,
ça veut dire carnet de voyage.
and which is called a
Carnet de voyage.
travel permit.
De 1998 à
It's-
aujourd'hui,
And from 1998 to today,
toutes les rencontres que j'ai eu à faire dans ce monde-là,
because all the meetings I've had in that world,
tous les gens qui sont venus chez moi,
everybody who came to my house, who came to
j'ai
my home,
fait des films que je voudrais maintenant monter,
because there are a lot of films. They've made films that I want to put together, that I want to
tel que le film sur Martin Scorsese au Mali,
and you see Martin Scorsese came to Mali,
sur ma présence à New York avec Martin Scorsese au Guild.
and I was with Martin Scorsese in New York at the Guild,
Il y a Jean-Jacques Hano, qui
Jacques Hano,
Costa Gavras, tous
Costa
les grands
Gavras.
cinéastes qui ont traversé mon pays, qui sont venus,
all the filmmakers, or great filmmakers who came to my country.
toutes les rencontres que j'ai eues dans les différents festivals, j'essaye de le faire voir.
And I want to show the different meetings, the different encounters that I had in various film festivals.
C'est un gros projet
It's a big project.
et ça demande beaucoup de patience
Oui.
et de soutien.
Requires support and patience.
Parce que j'ai 4 films que j'ai faits aux États-Unis.
There are 4 films I made in the United States.
2 avec Martin
2 with Martin
et 2
Scorsese,
autres à Los Angeles
And- 2 more in Los Angeles,
et ici encore New York.
and here,
À New York,
New York.
yeah, New York.
qu'on appelle Mémoire,
And it's called Remembrances.
le titre provisoire.
It's a provisional title.
On est en train de monter le film de Martin. Dès que ça sera terminé, on va l'envoyer à Martin pour qu'il le regarde. Et
And once we
nous
finish
dit ce
the
qu'il en
film
pense.
about Martin, we will send it to him and we will send it around so that people can see it.
Et il faut lui rendre ce qu'il a fait parce que Martin, il est venu nous rendre visite au Mali. Ça a été quelque chose de très fort.
And it was really something powerful, his visit to Mali, so we have to do something in return.
Puisqu'on sait qu'on est dans une situation très difficile
Because we know we're in a very difficult situation.
et que Martin, compte tenu de son temps, a venu pendant 4 jours rencontrer les jeunes,
And
discuter
Martin,
les autorités.
Martin
voyager.
came, traveled around, he met the young people, he talked to the authorities, he was there for 4 days, he discussed, he had all kinds of encounters.
Et tous les grands artistes du Mali lui ont fait un accueil formidable.
And the great Malian artists received him very, very warmly. They gave him a great welcome.
Et c'est pour ça que je dis que ce serait injuste de ne pas faire un documentaire là-dessus.
And so that's why I thought it would be unfair not to make a documentary about that
Pour que le
experience.
monde voit
People need to see it,
et qu'ils comprennent
and they need to understand
qu'il y a des pays qui ont besoin de soutien.
that there are countries that need support,
Et ceux qui osent le faire,
and those countries that need that have the
c'est la seule
courage
façon de leur dire merci.
to support us. This is the only way we have to thank them.
Interesting. Does he have a general comment or reflections about the state of filmmaking in Africa today, especially with digital technology? We're talking about Atlantic
Moi,
by Mathieu Diop.
non, mais d'abord, je viendrai sur le cas de l'Afrique. Ce que je voudrais qu'à travers cette rencontre aujourd'hui,
I would just like to say that after this meeting, or through
que
this meeting
d'autres oreilles
today,
nous entendent
I would like other ears to listen to us,
et surtout à toutes les universités les États-Unis
And I would like to address all the universities in the United
qu'il
States
y ait un moyen de faire circuler certains de nos films dans leur circuit.
and so that to have them circulate the films in their circuits, in their environments.
Le monde se modernise à tel rythme
The world is becoming modern and so fast
qu'on doit faire voir certaines réalités à nos enfants.
because we have to show our children certain realities because things are changing so rapidly.
Et les étudiants ont besoin de se nourrir.
And students need to get this kind of nourishment.
Les anciennes traditions, c'est déjà merci.
Yeah, yes, to see, because the old traditions are like, thank you.
Avançons, avançons, avançons.
And we're moving on and we're moving on and we're moving on. They say, thank you and let's go move on.
Pour ce qui concerne la nouvelle génération de cinéastes africains, puisque c'est de ça ta question,
And your question was about the new generation of African cinema.
je pense qu'il y a des talents.
I think there's talent.
Il y a des talents qui se relèvent, qui sortent de l'eau.
There are talents that are coming up to the surface, they're coming up from the water.
Et je serai satisfait le jour où je verrai les films de cette génération monter partout, vus partout.
And I want to see the films of this generation everywhere. I want them to be shown, to be screened everywhere.
Et c'est de là où je pense que le cinéma peut beaucoup aider l'Afrique.
And I think this is what cinema can help that and make it happen.
Parce que quand les films bien faits en Afrique, qui sont montrés aux États-Unis,
Because when you make movies in Africa and they're shown in the United States,
je donne ma main que les générations qui vont le voir, ça va leur changer complètement.
I would cut my right hand to show that future generations are going to do anything to see them, and it's going to change those generations.
Voilà ce que j'ai à dire.
This is all I have to say.
Thank you.